There's a lot of talk, both at the beginning of the coinage talk, you heard the word stability. And that's what you're hearing again today in Europe with the Greek and Italian breakdown. The question is, what kind of stability is it? For the Europeans and for the Americans and for central bankers throughout the world, you have to have a lobotomy. You have to have 90% of your brain removed so that your idea of stability is wages not going up, consumer prices not going up, and asset prices soaring. In the United States, the Federal Reserve, from Alan Greenspan and Ben Bernanke, used the word great moderation for the period from 1990 onwards. What they mean by great moderation is all of the money is taken by the richest 1% of the population, and the population doesn't have a revolution. That's what they mean by moderation. You had in the United States in 1979, the richest 1% of America's population had 29% of the returns to wealth, interest, dividends, capital gains, and rent. By 2004, this proportion had just about doubled to 54%. Today, it's almost 2/3. That's moderation. There's no revolution. You can have utter rip-off of the economy, wages going down in America from 1979 today, living standards falling, a debt crisis forcing governments to sell off and privatize the public domain. That's moderation if you're the 1% at the top of the pyramid is becoming a creditor. So this is why there are riots out in Greece today. That's why there were riots in Iceland. You heard about the papers in America at least have the riots in Greece where they're saying, look, we're having a social fascist government. They call themselves socialist, but they're the legacy of the colonels. And we're letting you know that when we have a chance to vote in another government, we're going to repudiate the debt. You have fair warning. And we're going out on the streets to let you know that the debts will not be paid. I've just come from a meeting of the Buckler Foundation in Berlin, which is sort of the sister organization for the Kansas City group. Many of our people were there. Every single economist I talked to there, every banker that I talked to when I met them in Frankfurt, realizes that the debts in Greece won't be paid. The debts in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy won't be paid because there's no money to pay. And if there's an attempt to extract it, there will be a revolt. What the Greeks say is, well, if we repudiate the debts, what's the European Central Bank going to do? It doesn't have any troops. And this reminds, during World War II, the Vatican denounced Stalin and communism, and Stalin quipped, how many troops does the Pope have? Well, you can say that to the central bank today. And the important point to make is that finance is a new mode of warfare. Finance seeks to achieve exactly what the Viking invasions or military invasions, including Japan's invasion of Korea, where it got the gold, Japan's invasion of China, where it got the gold. Most of these gold payments are taken by warfare, but now they're taken financially. The financial system seeks to take your land, the mineral rights, the public utilities. They tried to do that in Libya. When that doesn't work, they go to war, if it's a little country like Libya. But for other countries, finance is a much cheaper system of getting a country in debt and then going to Greece, for instance, and saying, well, you have to, in order for us to save you from our creating monetary collapse, you have to privatize 50 billion euros of public property. Why don't you sell us your islands? Give us your real estate. Give us the Athenian sewer system and a water system. Give us the ports, and then you can give us the money so we at the central bank have enough money to pay the German bankers, the French bankers, and the Dutch bankers that were stupid enough to buy your debt. And by the way, we realize that the Greeks then say, wait a minute, our wealthy ruling class has reported to have $45 billion in Switzerland. So you want us to sell off all of our property, reduce our wages by 30%, force the Greeks to emigrate just to pay for the capital flight that's going to your country in Switzerland? You know, forget it. That's why there's going to be a revolution if there is an attempt by the euro to actually collect these uncollectible debts. They can't be paid. Same thing is going to happen in Italy. This basically is the key to the problem. Obviously, the game is over. And my basic talk before I'd had this lead-in was to give you a background, the big picture. All the populations of the world, the United States and Europe, emerged from World War II pretty much free of debt. There wasn't anything to buy for consumers during the war, so they'd saved their money in savings bonds or savings. They'd built up the savings. Germany, after World War II, did not have to pay reparations, unlike World War I. In fact, the Allies came into Germany, and in 1947, the monetary reform canceled all of the debts in Germany. The reason was simple. The debts were owed to the old Nazi class. And by canceling the debts, they were freeing the population from the credits that had been built up by the supporters of the Nazis, who the Allies had just defeated. All debts were canceled except for wages owed by employers to their employees, and there was a modicum. People were able to keep a modicum of just working balances in the bank accounts. This was the most successful clean slate since Hammurabi's great-grandson Ammi-Sadaqwa canceled the debts in 1648 BC. It was very thorough. And actually, we have every ruler of Hammurabi's dynasty, by the way, started their reign, as I mentioned, with a clean slate, a debt cancellation. And the creditors, mainly the collectors and the royal bureaucracy, tried to get around it with subterfuges and technicalities in the small print. So each debt cancellation got longer and longer, closing off the loopholes. That was their version of the U.S. Reform of the banking law today, and it's the Edict of Ammi-Sadaqwa, or Ammi-Sudaqwa, as it's pronounced in Arabic, has been translated and is available for you to read. What happens today is that something has to give. The banks, because they were able to get the government to have essentially rely on the banks didn't, under the Basel Accords that govern European bank policy, the banks don't have to have any reserve against government debts, on the theory that government debts have AAA ratings and can always pay, just like the junk mortgages, which we call toxic waste in America, had AAA ratings. So there are no reserves against these. So the default of Greece is going to bring down the banking system, not only of Europe, but 2 weeks ago you had Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner, the bank lobbyist who was appointed Treasury Secretary, went over to Europe and said, you have to bail out Greece because the American banks and money market funds have made big bets that Greece is going to pay. And if Greece doesn't pay, we're going to go bankrupt. He didn't say, and we're going to have to kill you like we do in the Near East because they're white people. We're not going to kill white people, but you just have to, we will wreck your monetary system if you don't pay the Greek debt. So you can't have a default. So instead of having a Greek default on the bonds last week, it was the Greeks, the European banks promised a voluntary debt write-down. A voluntary debt write-down, saying we'll take 50%, means that the people who hold these debts and have bought insurance against debt default can't collect, because the insurance is against the default on debt, not against a debt write-down. And this is going to keep lawyers busy for the next 30 years, saying, is this a default or not, if it's voluntary? I recommended to the Greek television crew that came up and interviewed me in Berlin last week that they postpone all debt payments and principal payments on all debts to Europe until such time as the lawyers decide whether this is a default or not. Sometime in 50 years, I will have been dead by then for a long time, but presumably they can decide whether the Greeks should begin paying. Immediately there was a riot in the street in Greece, and most of the labor unions supported my position, and you can read about it on the internet. So that's basically what we're having now. You've had a kind of race to the bottom, and the question is, which currency is going to sink fastest? I was going to focus a lot of what I was saying on the relations between the euro and the dollar and sterling, and the key is, people have been saying, well, is the dollar going to weaken? Well, the dollar was going to weaken. China said, we don't want to take much of a loss on our dollar. Let's encourage, what are we going to do with our $2 trillion worth of foreign exchange? We don't want to be like Japan and lend it all to the U.S. military to finance its base in Okinawa. So we're going to try to buy in euros. That didn't work out very happily. The Europeans were hoping that the Chinese were going to then lend money to bail out Greece, to bail out the French and Greek banks, to pay the Americans and keep the circular flow going. But the Chinese said that wasn't our idea. There seems to be the same kind of tunnel vision in talking about international currencies today that there is in talking about coinage. When I go to Beijing and I talk to the officials there, the big picture is that not simply that money is debt, but that international debt is used to finance international military writing. In the articles that I've been doing in the Financial Times about the BRIC countries and their alternative currency, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it's very clear that the purpose of monetary reform and creating an alternative to the dollar standard is to create an alternative to the unipolar world of American military dominance. Last Monday, or on the 17th of November in St. Petersburg, there was another meeting of the BRIC countries and the group that met in Yekaterinburg 2 years ago, and Mr. Putin, it was not. There's no reporting of this in the American press whatsoever. You have to read Russian or Chinese to understand what was said. They did not let NATO observers attend the meeting, but the Shanghai Cooperation people did. To Asia, the new currency is designed as a way of preventing holding your reserves in the form of free credit supplied to the U.S. Defense Department through the Treasury. As you probably know, in America, we've had a Republican administration for the last 12 years, and next year there will be another Republican administration under Mr. Obama.